In the blurb I put about today's live, I was saying that trauma can be the cause of that feeling of not being safe and of being alone. And I also wanted to say that tonight's live actually came about because of what you guys shared when I asked you a few days ago about what did you want to put. Yes, of course you can, Louise. What did you want me to include in my book? And one of the things that kind of was a standout comment from a lot of you was I felt alone and I felt unsafe and I felt lonely. And I was talking to my team about this because I was like, how do we talk about this in a way that helps all of you guys and it empowers you? And they brought me to these two cards. The truth is, I feel safe and I am loved, right? Because for many, many people, we all know you can see through their behavior. One of the things that happens is as you grow, you notice, oh, they could do with connecting to their higher self, or you can really see that they don't feel loved or they don't feel safe because of behaviors they are exhibiting. So this is quite a big topic. At the moment, I'm being told it's just 1 week, but we'll see what my team say about next week. Let's start off with talking about trauma and what is trauma, right? Trauma can be the big things in life. So deaths, divorces, can be loss of a pet as well. For many of you, that can be extremely traumatic as losing a human family, friend or member. It can be loss of a job. It can be changes within your job, so the structure of your job or how you're recognized within your job, that can also cause trauma for you. It can also be the trauma of moving home. I've had clients, for example, who as teenagers had to rapidly leave their familial home and leave everything behind. That is trauma as well. Bullying at school is trauma. Having an argument with your best friend or having a really big fallout with a family member, that can be trauma. So there's that kind of big trauma that happens. Then you have trauma like that's sort of in the background and it doesn't feel like it's a big thing, but because it's constant, like a drip drip effect, it begins to affect you. So an example would be, I've got a client whose parents had money worries and also her mother was quite volatile. Now, this client of mine, she was the youngest of 3 girls and she really felt the brunt of the money worries, but she also felt the brunt of her mum's volatility. And you know, she said to me this week, actually, to this day she cannot listen to drum and bass music because after a few minutes her mum would just explode. So even today she notices when that music comes on, it starts to create anxiety within her. Now, she's a grown woman with kids of her own now, so she doesn't live at home with her mum, but that is an example of that drip drip effect still affecting her and still kind of going, it triggering a response in her, okay? So that's also a type of trauma that can have a big impact on you. Another kind of trauma, which is a drip drip effect, is the dialogue you're hearing at home. So if you are hearing someone constantly belittle someone else in whatever shape or form, that can be traumatic for you as well. And the reason it's traumatic is because it is so against your nature. It is so against what your soul and your higher self are trying to bring out for you, right? And this kind of brings us back to what happened in non-physical to us. So if you remember, I've talked about this before, but if you remember, when your soul was created, it was created with a plan that your higher self and God had discussed and agreed that this soul, when it came to planet Earth, would have these experiences. But the plan was that we would stay connected to the love that we experienced and felt and knew in non-physical. However, Physical life is a lot harder than I think many in non-physical understand, and many of us, our higher selves won't have had a physical lifetime, so they don't know how hard it can be. And we forget at the time of our transition, when we are being transformed from non-physical into physical and transforming in our mother's wombs, we are beginning to experience that disconnection for the first time, because we can feel our mother's fear, pain, joy, laughter, love, because we can feel everything our mothers feel. So if you think about this, right, supposing the way you were conceived was traumatic for your mother, for whatever reason, the circumstances, whatever, that will have an effect on you within the womb. Now, when you're still in the womb, you are still connected to the energy of non-physical. So you're still predominantly feeling love. But the trauma that your mum experienced might come out in her parenting of you. So she might have a dialogue, for example, that children have ruined her figure, or children are the cause of her lack of money, and children are just difficult, right? So you grew up with that narrative and feeling the blame that she's imposing on you. But actually it's come from her disconnection and her fear that she felt at the time of your conception, okay? Another example might be when you're in the womb, supposing a bereavement happened and you're feeling your mother's grief at that, right? And some of you might even have sensed your father's grief, or if your father was an absent father when your mum was pregnant with you, you might have felt that absence. And although in the womb you are still connected to love, once you were born, that remembrance of love from non-physical fades quite rapidly. And so it's very hard as a baby to kind of go, right, I'm going to still choose love. I'm not going to choose fear. I'm going to choose love, right? And this was my personal experience, okay? So to give you context, I was born as an emergency cesarean. I was quite overdue. My heart was slowing down, essentially. I was an emergency cesarean, but when I was born there was huge disappointment on one side of my family because I was not a boy. I was the first grandchild on that side, and I was not a boy, I was a girl. And so as a baby I felt all of that disappointment. I felt that I wasn't good enough, I felt unworthy, and this was as a newborn, right? And then to cap it all, when I was 6 weeks old, my mum left me in India and came back here. There are reasons for her behaviour, but what that did was compound that feeling of unworthiness. Now, one of the things I've understood quite recently, actually, in my connection with God, is that when I was in non-physical, this was all planned. Hi, Carolina. This was all planned. And they had said to me, this is going to happen to you and you will need to choose love. But as a physical human baby, I was not able to. And so it triggered some really massive fear in me, which I carried through my childhood and into adulthood until I started working on myself. So do you see that you start off in non-physical in this sea of unconditional love? That's all you've known. You are conceived by your physical parents and you're still swimming in this beautiful sea of unconditional love. But once you are born into this physical life, the memory of that fades, and it's much harder for you to start choosing love. And so you grow up with parents who are trying the best they can given their circumstances, and sometimes that's just not very good, okay? And that creates trauma for you as well, because parents can be careless, they can be absent, they can be inconsistent, they can be volatile, they might have substance abuse issues, they might have food addictions, for example. All of those can create trauma in you. And as a result of that, you start to feel a lack of safety because there's no consistency. in when you look at how to rear children, one of the things about children is that if you can be consistent in your parenting, even if you're a bad parent, it's enough to create stability in a child, right? Because an inconsistent parent, if you're consistently inconsistent, the child will still know this is what they're like, but I can work with this because I know this, right? But if you're a good parent and you're really consistent, really loving, great boundaries, you can create really great human beings. So just coming back to the trauma, what happens is that you have the big traumas in life, you have the daily traumas that build up, and all of these things are creating low vibration in you, right? You're having a low transitional vibration, and then if you're not working through that, it's storing in your body. So what happens then? This is stuff you should all know if you've been following me for a while, or if you're in one of the other 5D groups, you'll know this. But for those of you that are new, I just wanted to touch on it. So it can create false beliefs. Now, I love the word false because it's a great acronym. False evidence appearing real, right? Your brain will create beliefs that run in your subconscious that run behaviors which lead to substance abuse, addictions. It can be addictions to relationships, it can be addictions to food, it can be addictions to exercise, it can be addictions to gaming, it can be addictions to any number of things, okay? It also can create behaviors that don't support you, so poor boundaries, for example. Or choosing people who are going to let you down and compound that feeling of I'm not lovable and I'm not safe. And then you might also start to develop physical illnesses. So an example would be diabetes is a really good one, because if you've read Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life, she talks about diabetes being the thing, it's the feeling that life is not sweet enough. So that's a systemic illness that affects you. Arthritis, for example, is another low vibration illness. There'll be others, right? So think people who get constant tonsillitis or colds and coughs. It's a sign that their body's struggling with that low vibration that is being activated every day and then stored in their body. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to live with this, because if you are in this group, you will have known that you can connect to your higher self. There's a free higher self connection process now in the group. And if you have followed the releasing process that's laid out in Believe, you can start releasing this. Now, why would you do that? Well, part of it is because you don't need to carry that what was energy. What was energy is old energy. It is the thing that has gone and no longer affects you. I said to someone in this group who was talking about the messages they'd received growing up around men and masculinity, and I said, but that's your parents' energy. It's a what was energy, because you're not that person, you're not your parent. And if any of you have done some inner work, which I know many of you have done, then what was energy shouldn't be brought into the future, or shouldn't be brought into the present even, okay? It is the stuff that you leave behind. And how do you do that? You use your affirmations. The truth is that was old energy and is no longer relevant to me. A really easy truth for you to create, and you create these truths with your higher self. But the other thing about this what was energy and and this feeling of not being safe, or the feeling of not feeling loved, means that you are still disconnected from God's love. You are disconnected from the love from your team that they're constantly flowing you, and it leads to that feeling of being alone, of being lonely, of feeling sad, of feeling disconnected, of feeling lost. All of those feelings come from that trauma. But if you start connecting with your higher self and you start implementing the truths and the releasing process, you can let go of what was energy. If you have any questions for me, by the way, please do put them on there. If you have circumstances where you've experienced trauma, or you know you've let go of something and you're happy to share, bearing in mind everything in here is confidential, please do share. I don't want it just to be a one-way conversation, so please do share. Okay, so you've got tools that you can do to start releasing that low stored vibration. Is the releasing process. You connect with your higher self and create new truths. But another tool you can use are your vortexes of emotion. So you have got strength at the base of your perineum. You have truth by your belly button, hope, which is in your solar plexus, love, which is in your chest, in the middle of your chest, and then you have trust, which is here. Now, for those of you that don't feel trust because you don't feel safe and you don't feel loved, you might have a lot of throat problems, for example. You might struggle to speak your truth and to trust that it will be received in the right way. I let go. Yeah, there you go. It's interesting, that one, isn't it, Carolina? Because that's one where it's got a lot of obligation and responsibility energy loaded into it. You are going to talk to your mum every day because that's what you're supposed to do. But actually, if it doesn't feel good to you and it's not in alignment with who you are, then it just generates tension and fear and trauma and more of that feeling of low stored vibration. So letting go of that guilt is the best present you can give yourself, right? So with the vortexes of emotion, what you can do is you can ignite them in different orders so that they help you feel better. So if you ignited all 5 of them, so strength plus truth plus hope plus love plus trust, you are actually generating faith, right? But for many of you, actually, what would be really helpful to generate is powerful love, and that is simply strength, which is at the base of your perineum, and your love vortex, which is in the middle of your chest, right? So strength plus love, and that's literally all that you say. Strength plus love, strength plus love, and that generates powerful love. And in powerful love, you can begin to connect again to that vibration of love, right? Hi, Geeta. Joanna said, during the last week, from my point of view, it's leaving the past behind. Yeah, I think that is true. Leaving that there is. So, okay, this is a good point that John's making. When people have hurt you in the past through their behaviours, or just because they've died, right? Because that creates grief in you. You have to always hold it in the context of they did the best that they could, right? So if growing up, for example, and I'm not saying this of John is my husband, for those of you that don't know, and I'm not saying this of my in-laws, but supposing my in-laws had beat John up, they never did, by the way, but supposing they had, I'm not condoning that behaviour, but my in-laws would have been acting in a way that was all that they knew. Is it good? No. But it's what they is. My responsibility, or his responsibility, would have been, okay, I'm going to just say what they did was a shitty thing to do, but actually I'm going to take responsibility for my reaction. And that's when we choose to let go of our past. It's when we choose to go on our healing journey, and it's when we choose to kind of go, actually, do you know what? Love for me first is really important. I'm going to give you guys another example. I have one sister, and we had quite a massive falling out where she didn't talk to me for almost 18 months. And I'll be honest, it broke my heart. But actually what I realised, and I had quite a lot of anger around this as well. But very recently what's happened is I was like, do you know what? I work really hard at vibrational mastery. I work at being the best version of me. So is feeling this anger towards her love for me first? Is it a good thing for me to feel that? Or does it generate more low stored vibration? Is it constantly bringing my vibration down? And if that's the case, I don't want to live like that. I'm choosing to live a high vibrational life, a life where love for me first is really important for me. And love for me first means I choose happiness, I choose prosperity, I choose health. I choose to hang out with people like you guys who are in my community, who make my heart sing from the conversations we have. That is love for you, me first, and hopefully love for you first, right? It'll be doing the hobbies and the activities that generate great deal of satisfaction and makes you feel good, and you get uplift and you feel reassured and you feel safe and loved in those. That is love for you first, right? So going back to my sister, I was like, this is not actually love for me first feeling like this. And I had a conversation with a really good friend who said, do you know what? You need to actually tell her how you feel. And as soon as my friend said it to me, it was like someone had given me permission outside of myself to actually go, how you treated me was not right. And then I happened to be on a group call with some friends, and I saw the statement, divine love is not caring. And what that means is divine love is unconditional. Caring is filled with obligation, responsibility. I should have, want to, I wish they did something different, right? As soon as I heard that statement, and I had this permission from my friend, what happened was all that angst I was feeling evaporated away from me. And part of it was because it was what was energy. I'm no longer that person that she fell out with a while ago, right? It was 2 or 3 years ago. I'm not that person anymore. I've changed so much in that time. So you don't want to hang on. To go back to John's point, you don't want to hang on to the past. So remember, when you are letting go of your trauma, when you are seeking to feel safe, when you are seeking to feel loved, and by that I mean by God and your team, not just the physical humans around you, you want to start kind of saying to yourself, is that thing that happened to me, is it still relevant to me? Number one. Number two, do I need to hold on to this memory and those emotions associated with it? Number three, what are the subconscious fears and beliefs I've generated as a result of those experience or experiences, right? Because it could be more than one. And number four is, how can my higher self help me to release those fears and find a better way of living, a better truth, right? And the truth is you are safe. The truth is you are lovable. The truth is you are wanted. The truth is you are amazing. The truth is you are a wondrous human being who is brave and beautiful and wonderful, right? But you have to bring yourself to that. And in that process of those questions, asking those questions, you learn to accept that people make mistakes. You don't have to repeat those mistakes. You don't have to indulge their mistakes or their behaviors. You learn to step away from those people if you no longer want them in your life. And you learn how to move forward in a way that fulfills you and brings you that sense of security and that sense of I am loved. Because you begin to hang out with people who love you, who want to be with you, who admire you, who think you're the bee's knees, right? So this is the power of understanding how loved you are and how safe you are. Now, the last thing I'm going to say on this before I draw cards is the thing about God, okay? Many people in their disconnection don't feel God's energy. So I'm going to offer you a little experiment to do when you're oh, you're really welcome, Mickey. I'm glad it helps. You know, I'm going to give you a little experiment to do with God, because I want you to understand that you cannot get it wrong. Yes, Emily, I will make a note and give you a card. You cannot get anything wrong with God, okay? Because when your higher self went to God and said, I want a soul to come to the earth, God loved you enough to say yes to your higher self. So his love for you is unconditional. His love for you never wavers, right? So I'm going to give you a little experiment to do. Yes, you can, Mickey, of course you can. When you next go to the supermarket or a shop, I want you to stand in that shop, and I'd like you to stand in front of the chocolate counter, right? And I would like you to just take a deep breath and connect to your higher self, and then say to God, could you come and just stand with me while I'm looking at the chocolates? And what chocolate would you like? And see what he says to you. Now, I say this to you because I have done exactly this thing, and it was one of the nicest interactions I've had with God, right? Now, if you don't get anything, it doesn't mean he wasn't there. It just means that your receiving needs fine-tuning. So just keep practicing this one little experiment, and eventually you will start to receive from him. God's love for you is infinite. It never changes. It never, ever changes. It is always there. It is stable. It is strong. It surrounds you constantly. It is unconditional. And it is always, always flowing to you. All right? So, I'm going to love you and leave you all. I'll put a link to the higher self readings in the comments. If you have any questions or you want me to talk more about trauma, in my previous business, I used to spend all my time helping people with anxiety that was trauma-based, release that anxiety, and in 3 months they'd be anxiety-free. So if you know someone who's got anxiety and that it's trauma-based and they need some help, come back to me and I can talk to you about what I can offer them. But I'll put a link to the higher self readings in the comments. Come back to me if you have any questions. Have a wonderful week. I have a little surprise brewing for you all. I'm just feeling into it at the moment, but hopefully to reveal it either on Sunday or Monday. I will talk to you all soon, my friends. Take care, look after yourselves, and remember, you are immense, you are loved, and you are safe.